Okay, welcome to Cybersecurity 101 with Larry and Joe. But yeah, it's been a while, so we're very excited about this episode, and hopefully everyone will enjoy it.
Yeah, good to talk to you again, Larry. I know there was some specific topics you wanted to chat about on this one. What do we have in store for us today?
So we have in store for us today the breach that happened with the mobile phone services
Mm,
with AT&T, Verizon, and I think it was T-Mobile. What people should be looking out for, what may have happened, and people that's in the cybersecurity world, what we should be looking for when someone is trying to change they're changing their method of authentication.
okay.
What we should be looking out for to make sure that it is especially when they're changing it to with their cell phone.
So my understanding, what happened is the hackers from China got into 8 different mobile phone carriers, including uh, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. There was 5 others that we don't know the exact names because that hasn't been publicly, announced. But it's believed that they came in through a vulnerability in Cisco routers that were end of life, meaning uh,
Oh,
they no longer had a support contract to get security updates on those public facing internet routers. So the hackers came in through those devices, and it's believed that there's so many devices that would have to be replaced that it's going to be quite some time before they'll be completely evicted out of these telecommunication carriers. Now, what the attackers did when they got in is they accessed the wiretap system, which means that they could essentially have the same content that law enforcement would have if they had gained a subpoena or a warrant to obtain all of your text messages and phone calls. So essentially, they're able to listen in and read text. Now, what we understand is that they specifically were targeting political figures and a limited number of people. They weren't, spying on people like you and me. And so while the FBI did issue a memo recommending for people to use encrypted messaging apps as opposed to just, generic text messages, I don't think that the general public has much, to really worry about there because it's, everything we understand is that they were really after, top political figures. Now, it's also worth mentioning that when you're a iPhone user and you communicate with another iPhone user using the iMessage protocol, that is already encrypted, and you don't need to change your behavior. You don't need to switch to, WhatsApp or Telegram or any other kind of app. You can, as if you're communicating iPhone to iPhone, you're fine. The challenge is that when you're communicating from an iPhone user to an Android user, it goes over standard text messaging. It does not actually, it's not encrypted. And so that would be, where the vulnerability, would happen. And under that scenario, if you really wanted to be secure, you would switch to, say, WhatsApp or, a similar app like Signal or Telegram to have those
right.
kind of, communications. So, that's what we know about the situation.
Okay. Okay. That's great. So um as a SOC op, which I work as a site security analyst, I brought that up in our meeting and what to look out for, what we should be looking out for. And I can't remember, it was a side that he, I can't remember what he said, but it was a way that you could find out if it's a bad actor that changed the method of someone's authentication, that maybe if one of the you know serious hackers had got into like Verizon or something, what to look out for. I forgot what Assad told me, and I was wondering if you I've heard of anything in that manner.
So I think what he's probably referring to is if you were using SMS text messages as
Yeah,
a form of two-factor authentication,
yeah,
then you want to switch away from SMS text and use authenticator apps instead of text messaging. And that's been a best practice for several years now. But yeah, I mean, theoretically, if the hackers got into the wiretap system, they would have copies of the SMS 2FA codes. Now,
right.
obviously, they'd still need your password, to be able to fully get into an account. But yeah, it definitely is good practice to move away from text messages in general, even before this attack occurred.
Okay. All right. So my second question is, how can just a regular, we say a regular Joe, a regular person, harden their security, definitely when it comes to cell phone usage or maybe anything that's there on the internet or anything like that. Um, I don't know how you, I don't know what's your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so just kind of, to double down on what we were just kind of talking about, the first thing to do is to definitely set up some form of two-factor authentication, and text messaging, even though it's insecure, it's still better than not having any two-factor authentication at all because someone can guess your password. Or if you're like many of us, if you're human, you probably do what's called password recycling, where you use the same password on multiple websites. Like, I think studies have shown that people use maybe four, maybe five passwords, and that's it because that's about all the human brain can kind of, remember for passwords, right? So you could actually use programs like LastPass to randomize passwords. So every site you go to would have a totally different password, and that's really considered a good practice because then if when that website, not if, but when that website gets compromised, then the attacker is only going to have access to that one account, not all your accounts. So
Accounts.
using a different password on every website is not really practical unless you actually had a password vaulting solution. Now, LastPass, is a commercial solution. There's also Password Safe, which is free. It's something you download, put on your machine. And, if you want to get really fancy, if you're an IT pro, you can actually configure it to require the use of a physical USB key to actually unlock that password safe. That way, if a hacker got on your machine and they copied your password safe, they wouldn't be able to unlock it because they wouldn't have your pass key, which is like a
Right.
FIDO2 USB key. So you know, again, there's levels to this stuff, right? There you got your freshman football, you've got your JV, you got your varsity, you got your semi-pro, you got your
Varsity.
pro. So the pro would probably be using a local password safe with a FIDO2 key because if you think about LastPass, they've already been breached a couple times. And so the last thing you want is your password vault with all your passwords getting compromised. And so the absolute, most secure thing would be, to do that. Now, what happens if you lose, that laptop or that safe or that USB key? That's the trade-off. One of the benefits with LastPass is you don't have anything to lose. They're hosting the data for you, right? Whereas if you have
Right.
the safe locally, what happens if you lose that safe or you lose that USB key or whatnot? So there's pros and cons, there's trade-offs there. But the first thing I would do is I'd recommend people to stop using the same password at every website they go to. I'd recommend that they start doing some type of 2FA. Text messaging is better than nothing, but given that the current, telecommunication carrier has been breached, it'd be very wise to use an authenticator app, but
Right.
it'd be even better to use a phishing resistant form of authentication like a USB key or a passkey. Passkeys can be installed into Windows Hello, or they can be installed in the authenticator app now. So there's
Oh, they can. Oh,
yeah. Yeah, as of May, you can put them in the Authenticator app. So there's,
Sweet.
that's basically kind of one thing. Now, uh, why do we talk about identity? Identity is kind of the security perimeter. If somebody has your account, they can get into all your data, right? So we want to harden the identity first, in my opinion, right? And
Right.
and that's why we talk about, you know, not doing password recycling, which means you're going to have to use a password safe. You just have to decide if you're going to use like a web-based one like LastPass, or if you're going to go super paranoid and have a local one on your disk. But then if you do the local one on the disk, make sure you don't lose that thing, right? So that's kind of the first thing. Now the second thing is, you can enable, a lot of people talk about VPNs, and this is a hotly debated topic, right? You
That
know,
is right now.
it's a big topic. Now, the cybersecurity community is kind of divided on it. There's pros and cons to VPNs. So let's talk about some of the benefits of a VPN. Right now in the United States, if you browse the internet, then your internet service provider by law can see your DNS traffic, and DNS by default is not encrypted. So your internet service provider, let's say it's like AT&T, or maybe it's Google, or maybe it's Cox or Time Warner, whoever you're getting your internet service from, they actually know exactly which websites you go to, and then they sell that information to advertisers. So that is currently allowed. I believe that law passed under Obama, where the
Right.
FCC allowed internet service providers to sell your internet traffic to advertisers. So now the advertisers know exactly what websites you go to so that they can better advertise to you. So if you don't
Right.
want that to happen, there's a couple things you can do. In your web browser, you can enable a feature called DNS over HTTPS, where now your
Okay.
DNS traffic is going to get encrypted. So every time you're on that web browser, then they don't know where you're going. So if we're talking about personal security and you didn't want your, internet service provider to be able to sell or even know where you're browsing, probably be a good idea to go in your web browser and enable DNS over HTTPS. Now, the other thing you could do is you could use a VPN. The VPN will do the same kind of thing. It's going to encrypt that DNS traffic, if you set it up right. So,
If you set it up right. And that's the key. So I brought up that question because a lot of my elders in my family, my mom, my aunts, and them, they're very concerned about, you know, not just being hacked, but I always try to tell them to stay off social media. They don't really need it, but they want to follow like their, you know, great
grandkids, and yeah, you
great
see all the
grandkids and
pictures.
stuff
Yeah.
like that. So they have it. So I did tell them, there's there's things that I use, like, because one of my cousins, he was on Instagram and got cloned, and then he started asking, the guy who cloned him started asking me for money, and I know key things about him that I I asked him, and the guy didn't know. That was one way that I did it. So I always tell him, always ask the second or third question, even when someone calls you, uh, nowadays. And then I always tell them the junk mail, don't go in there. If you didn't purchase anything and you get something in, if you didn't purchase it from that Amazon or uh, Kohl's or whatever, and you haven't sent to your home, don't pay that if you already paid it. It's just things like that, because I feel that especially the older ones in my family, they've been preyed upon. I think my uncle got hacked because he clicked on something that he wasn't supposed to.
Happens all
So
the
of
time.
course,
Yeah.
of course, who they called me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame that, and it's wrong, that hackers are targeting, the elderly and those that are not, into technology. They're taking advantage of the most vulnerable among us, and it's not right. So I think the wisdom, that you passed on to them, right, is very sound. Um, I think it's safe for them to ignore most emails, right? So most emails are going to come in saying, "Hey, you overpaid on your Amazon. Do you want your refund now?" Right? Ignore those kind of stuff. Just have them if there's ever a question, have them go directly to the retailer website as opposed to clicking
Yeah.
on any kind of link, in the email. And if you ever get a phone call from someone, hang up and call the company to verify that they are in fact
They
trying to
are who they
contact you, right?
are.
Because this time of year it's you'll often get some kind of a call from the IRS saying that you owe taxes, and who doesn't, right? Owe taxes. So uh, you're going to get some call, and this is you know Jeff Webb, IRS badge number
Yeah.
542, and and they're just going to you know scam you. So yeah, it, it's and until the internet changes where you have to have an ID to get on the internet, until something like that happens, it's just going to continue to be the Wild West.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just kind of how I feel. I mean, I'm so suspicious. QR codes, I really am very, 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 very skeptic of that. So I don't usually do that. I kind of told them that. I know a lot of restaurants nowadays, when you go in there, they don't have a menu. They might have the QR code, and they started that during COVID, and they just continue that. Maybe that's where they said save money too. I
Yeah.
don't know. I know there was a big scam going around my area with that, with the QR code. So what they'll do is they'll mail you out. Um, they'll send you a package from Amazon saying that yes, so this is your package. If it's not your package, scan this QR code to return it back. And once you scan that QR code, then they have access to your phone.
Yeah. The other thing is in restaurants, if you have a local hacker in your community, they'll
Yeah.
put a sticker over the restaurant's QR code with the
Yeah.
hacker's QR code. So you think you're paying that restaurant's bill on your phone. You actually are just sending money to the hacker.
Oh, that's crazy. I haven't heard about that one yet.
Yeah, so you'll see that. So just people putting stickers over QR codes with their, and it'll look identical. It'll say, the name of the restaurant, and you'll put your money in, and the restaurant will be like, "Hey, you haven't paid your bill." And be like, "Yeah, I did. Look." And then yeah, there's a sticker over the QR code.
Okay. So, Joe, in your view, if we were just if you was just to walk down the street, somebody to say, "Hey, do you know anything about cybersecurity?" And you say yes. What would be your suggestions for them? The best way, the best practice for them to kind of just, I mean, you're not going to be just kind of secure. So if you're not going to be 100% secure, but to the point to where they feel safe, like they can do stuff over the internet or
Yeah, one thing that people could do is they could keep a password book, and if you think about it, when you're at a company, if you actually go into an office building, it's never a good idea to write your password down on a post-it note and put it on your monitor because everyone in the building can kind of, walk by. But
yeah.
if you're at home, right? Let's say it's your aunt or your grandma or mom, if they have a local password book that they write their passwords down and they are writing a different password at every website, that can save them some money and some complexity because now they're not having to purchase and pay for LastPass. And if they're not an IT pro, they're not having to deal with a local, password database with like a FIDO2 key. They don't have to deal with any of that. So I would say for the average person, home user, have a little password book where, you maintain a different password for every website you go to, and that's going to solve a lot of problems because again the big thing that happens right now is credential stuffing, right? Where uh, the website that you were using that gets hacked, the hacker now knows that your password is scooter 123, and
Yeah.
now all your websites are now vulnerable. And so they have hacking tools called credential stuffing tools where they type in your email address and scooter123, and it's going to log into 1,000 websites as you.
Oh,
And now
wow.
they know exactly which websites you were using that password on. It's all automated. So it's called a credential stuffing tool. So that
Is that to do like Metasploit or something like that? Or
no, it's not Metasploit. It's actually just tools that you can get on GitHub.
oh, okay,
But
wow.
yeah, they're called credential stuffing tools, and we could put some of them in the show notes for people that want to be aware of what they are. Obviously, don't
Right.
attack anyone other than your own account. But
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we do not we don't want that, you know what I mean, for that to happen. Joe, that was a great that's a great way probably for someone to practice to do that. So